and talk all about pricing 101. Where do we start with our pricing? How do we make sure that we are not in the red whenever we start a business, okay? So first thing that I want to talk to you guys about is business psychology and everything, and what is a realistic expectation to make in your first year of business. Y'all have owned 3 different businesses, so I know exactly what I'm talking about when I sit there and tell you, you do not have to end up in the red for your first year of business. That is not, that I feel like that's a huge myth. Everyone's like, oh, well, it's normal your first year to end up like spending a lot more than you make. No, like that's not good business sense. You shouldn't sit there and think like that at all. But you also shouldn't think on the extreme other end where you should be making $40,000 or $50,000 in your first year. That's not realistic either. Is that what we want? Of course it's what we want, but that's not realistic. Like we can't sit there and expect to be making that kind of money and be paying our expenses in the first year of business. Does it happen to some people? Yes, it does. And I hope it happens to you, but we just have to be realistic with our expectations. So some myths that we hear a lot about with photography is you have to charge really low because you are just starting. That is the number one. They sit there and think that they have to charge low because either I'm just starting and I need experience, I need to build up my clientele, or they think like, oh, well, because I'm new, I have to charge really low. None of those are true. Could you imagine if like you are a new company or anything along those lines and you're not making a profit? Like that doesn't make sense whatsoever. Like we don't do it to anybody else. If I was a hairdresser and I go to a salon and say like, hey, I'm a brand new hairdresser and everything, here's my license and all that stuff, they're not going to sit there and say like, oh, well, you don't have to pay this person or only pay this person $10 because she's new. That's not how it works. We don't do that stuff with anything else. So why are we going to do it with photography? So that is something that I'm going to tell you, completely get out of your head. Just because you are starting out or just because you're new, just because you haven't built up clientele or anything, doesn't mean you get to charge either next to nothing or nothing for your sessions, because you are taking time away from your family, your friends, your life, whatever it is, and you're putting all of this money into a business. And that means you're like, especially guys, if you are a mother in here, think about that. You are taking money away from your family to put into this business. You're taking time away from your family to put into this business. And what do you have to show for it? Just pretty pictures and hope that you're going to be gaining the clientele that you eventually want? Doesn't work. So I'm going to tell you guys like what happened with me in the beginning of my business and what I saw and how I changed my mindset. Okay. And what's funny is I do believe a couple people are watching right now in this live who told me that this was going to happen. And I just didn't believe them. I didn't listen to them because I was like, I know what I'm talking about. No, I didn't. So what I did when I first started is I charged $75 for a session and I gave like 50 images. And it was absolutely exhausting. I was taking so much time away from Noah. I thought that because I booked, at a point in time, I booked like 15 sessions or something like that. I thought for sure, I was like, look how much money I'm making. Look how amazing I am. I charged $150 at one point for an hour and a half session. Like I sit there and say it now and I'm just like, I'm such an idiot. But you know, at the time I thought that this is what you're supposed to do because this is what photographers do. This is what they do when they're starting out. And when I sat down at the end of the year and looked at how much money I made versus the expenses that I had, I was in the red, which meant I was furloughed. Okay. I was furloughed, so I wasn't making any money. And I was taking a lot of time. I was working a lot of hours, y'all. I was working a lot and I ended in the red. And I'm a single mom. I was so frustrated with myself. And it was just one of those things that like, what am I doing? And when I sat down and thought about it, and like I said, I was so scared of running a cost of doing business because I thought it was overly complicated. And I was like, I don't know how many hours I work. I don't know how many sessions I book. I don't know what to pay myself. And all these questions started coming up. And so I just put it off because that's how I am. If I'm uncomfortable with something, I just kind of like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I put it off. Once I sat down and I started doing it, then what happened was I realized how much I needed to charge in order to just to cover my expenses. And I'm not talking about my personal expenses. I'm talking about my business expenses. So if you are a brand new photographer and you're sitting there saying to yourself right now, well, I don't have any business expenses. I'm going to tell you right now, that is a BS lie. There is, unless you don't have a camera, unless you don't have lenses, unless you walk to all of your sessions, you have expenses. Like, that's just how it works. Not only that, but it's our time too, the time that we're taking away, the time that we're marketing, the time that we're doing all of this stuff. It might not actually cost us money and dollars, but it is costing us something. It's something that we could be doing with other, like that time we could be doing with something different. So you have to take all of that kind of stuff into consideration when doing your cost of doing business or figuring out your prices. So when we sit there as brand new photographers and say we don't have any expenses, all right, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, like, you're right, you probably don't have a ton of expenses, but let's just talk this out real quick. Have you bought a camera and a lens? Yes, you probably have, right? Even if it was gifted to you, like, money was spent on a camera and a lens, okay? Do you plan on buying more lenses? The answer is probably yes, right? Have you had to buy an SD card? Probably yes. Have you had to take up either space or get a brand new computer for editing? Yep. Do you have to pay for Lightroom? Even if it's $10 a month, do you have to pay for Lightroom? Yeah, you probably do, or Photoshop, right? Do you have any props that you've needed? Probably. Like, even if it's just a blanket, whatever it might be, you have had to pay for something. Do you have external hard drives that you use? Probably. Do you have a website? Maybe not. You probably don't at first starting. CRM system? Probably not. I did when I first started because emailing everybody got like really overwhelming for me. But you probably don't have a CRM system, but that's something that you probably want in the future for your business, correct? Yeah. A gallery host. A lot of them are free nowadays, but if you want to have like certain abilities, like being able to charge for prints or anything along those lines, that's going to cost you money. Okay. Driving to your sessions and the gas, that costs money, and it also depreciates your tires. You need to get oil and everything. Even if it's just 10 minutes away, y'all, even if it's just 10 minutes away, it's still costing you money. Okay. So all of this stuff has to be considered when we're doing our pricing for our packages. I know it sounds silly. You're just like, oh, Ashley, that's $10 for Lightroom. That's nothing. But it just all adds up. It just adds up very significant, like a lot, $10 for Lightroom, $5 for gas each way for each session, and by the time that you're done, you have like maybe $500-$600 of expenses every month, but you're only charging $50 for a session. It just doesn't make sense, okay? So even if you are inexperienced, you need to make sure that you are at least covering your expenses. Am I going to say that you're going to be in the green, you're going to make a huge profit or everything on your first year? No, that's not realistic. But you also do need to think about like everything else, like education. That's another big one, guys. I feel like no matter what kind of business you are, you need to invest in education. If you want to learn your camera better, if you want to attend workshops or attend a mastermind or know marketing better or know how to manage your money better or anything along those lines, it costs money to be able to do that. And you have to be able to add that into your expenses, because the best way to learn is learning from someone who's already done it before. So if you learn from someone who is like an expert or knows what they're talking about or has done it before and they're showing proven results, don't you want to learn from them rather than going through years of trying to figure it out yourself? Of course you do. So you need to add in the education and how much it's going to cost you into those sessions as well. Even if you don't have something in mind right now, eventually something is going to come up, like a workshop or a mastermind or whatever it might be, where you're like, I really want to go. And then you have that expense already. You have that money there because you charge properly for your sessions. So when I first started, like I said, y'all, like I charged $50, I think, no, $75 for a mini session, $150 for a full session. And the kind of people I was attracting were not my people at all. And I don't mean like I wanted like, like prissy people. I'm talking about they treated me like I was a nobody. They treated me like I was an amateur. They thought that they were better than me. They not everybody. I'm going to be very clear. It wasn't everybody, because I still have some people who were with me during that time that still take pictures with me now, and I absolutely love them. They were like the diamond in the rough. You know what I mean? But majority of them, they treated me so poorly because I was not having a confidence in myself and showing them, that I could do things with the price. The best way that I can describe this is If you go to a used car dealership and there is a brand new Mercedes with 0 miles on it, I'm talking like brand stinking new, well, used car dealership, it's got like 5 miles on it, okay? And they're only charging $1,000 for that car, your first thought is going to be, what's wrong with the car? Like, why are you only charging $1,000? It's not going to be, oh, wow, what a deal. This is amazing. Like, of course it's going to be a good car. You're more likely to not treat it correctly. You're more likely not to, like, treat the car like with respect because you're not paying a lot. Now, that's not with everybody, obviously, but it is very true. Think about anything that you purchase. You know what I mean? Like, if it's only $10, you think to yourself, oh, it's only $10. I can get another one if I need to. But if it's $300, you might think about it a little bit more and treat it a little bit better, right? So when we sit there and undervalue ourselves as well, it tells other people that they can undervalue us too. They can treat us poorly because of what we're charging. And that's what I dealt with. I dealt with a lot of that. And I wish that I knew that going into it. So many people told me. My good friend Rihanna told me. My good friend Erin told me that I needed to charge more. And I kept telling them, like, you guys don't know anything. We all start somewhere. You know what I mean? And I have those people. There's educators out there who tell you to start low. There's literally educators out there that will tell you start at $50. That is the dumbest thing. Like, don't do that to yourself, because once you set that bar that low, what happens is it's so hard. It's so difficult to get yourself back up there. Because could you imagine going to a restaurant and all of their food was $5? Everything on the menu was $5. And you're like, oh, this is amazing. I'm going to keep coming back because it's cheap food. Even if it was good, even if it's good food, it's cheap food, right? And then all of a sudden, 2 weeks later, you go back to it and everything's $50. You'd be like, forget that. I remember when it was $5 and it was the same stuff. You know what I mean? So don't do that to yourself because it is rough. And so what I've had to do is every quarter move up my prices $25 until, like, I mean, oh man, this light is just killing me. The light outside keeps changing, and it's like killing me. But what happens is, like, when you do that and you have to up your prices slowly at that point, and that means like more in the red or less profit for you when you deserve more. Okay. So that's what I had to do. I had to up my prices. I'm still having to do it because I did not price myself correctly. Now, do I make a profit now? Of course, but I'm not where I want to be. Like, I'm not where, like, my work is. So the best thing that I can recommend is doing a cost of doing business and figure out what is the minimum you need to charge in order to remain zero. Okay? That means I don't make money, but I also don't lose money. And then when you're doing your cost doing business, like, that's like the first quarter. Like, don't give yourself a salary for the first quarter. And when I say that, it's not because I don't want you to make money. It's because I firmly believe that when you start a business, you should not expect to pay yourself right away, especially if you're still learning, and you're not 100% confident. But once you understand manual mode and you understand basic lighting principles and you understand kind of like how to edit a picture, you know what I mean? Then that's when you can actually start making a profit with your sessions, okay? Not when all of a sudden you're comfortable with posing, because that comes later. That's something that you have to continually practice. Guys, sometimes, like, I go out there and I'm still like, I don't know, does this look right? Like, I'm more confident, but there's some sessions where I'm just like, I didn't do that very well. You're never going to be perfect in this business. And God, I hope I'm never perfect. I hope there's never a time where I can't learn anymore, because that's boring. Like, I constantly want to be learning. I constantly want to be growing and getting better and better and better at my craft. So if you wait to start charging until you are good in your eyes, guys, we naturally will never think that about ourselves. Like, hopefully one day I will, but sometimes I still look at my pictures and I'm just like, why does anyone hire me? Sometimes I look at my education videos and think, why is anyone listening to me? Because we're so critical of ourselves and we judge ourselves and we judge our images and we undercharge ourselves so much because we don't see the value in ourselves. And it's awful. It's so bad. I don't know why we do it, but we all do. And so when we do that to ourselves, we're allowing other people to feel that way about us too. So know it's difficult. The easiest way to do it without having to ask people like, well, what would you pay for this, is run your cost of doing business and figure out exactly what you need in order to make either zero or a little bit of a profit. So how I set it up is I say, run your cost of doing business, figure out without a salary how much it takes for you just to run your business, and then set that as your price, okay? And I promise you right now, it's not $50 or $75. Promise you that, okay? Because you also have to take into consideration the time that you are spending on your business. And your time is not just how long you are at that session. It's how long you are editing for, how long you are marketing for, how long you are in your business working, okay? Just for that one session. We got to take that into consideration because that is time away from your family, okay? And so when we figure all of that out and we sit there and say like, okay, this is how much I need to make in order for this to make sense, like to be able to cover my expenses and cover like my time away from the kids, or time away from my husband, or time away from my friends, or your dog, or whatever you're spending time away from, okay? And then when we do that, and we're doing that for the first 3 months, okay, then we're going to go ahead and say, okay, now I want to go ahead and make a salary off this. I'm working part-time. So part-time work is about $20,000, and add that $20,000 in per year, and then go ahead and figure that out again. I run a cost doing business every quarter, sometimes every 6 months. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes life gets busy, but I try and do it every quarter. And that's where we need to start. We need to start at the minimum it takes for us to cover our cost. And again, I'm not just talking about monthly occurrence, like $10 for Adobe or whatever. It's how much is our cameras depreciating, and same thing with our lens. And we also have to clean our gear and take care of our gear and calibrate our gear. So all of that stuff needs to factor in, even though it's not something that you're paying right now or once a month or whatever. Eventually it's going to, like, it cost me $500, I think, to clean 3 of my lens, 2 of my bodies. I think it cost me $500. If I sit there and just was like, oh, well, that doesn't count because I'm not paying that right now, and then all of a sudden that $500 bill comes up and I don't have money to pay it, it doesn't make sense. We have to take that 500 and put it throughout I do it twice a year. So it's $1,000 for me a year to get my camera stuff cleaned. So I divide that by 12 months, and that's monthly I'm having to pay. So, and then I take that money and I put it into like a little savings account. So that way, when the time comes to change or clean my gear or upgrade my gear or buy a new lens or whatever I want to do, it's there. Same thing with education. If I sit there and say, okay, I want to be able to spend $5,000 on education this year, and I don't have anything in my ideas yet of what I want to do, but I know I want to spend, like, I'm budgeting $5,000 for it. I break it up into 12 months and I pull it aside. So when a course does come available, or someone that I'm passionate about and I want to learn from has something available, I have that ability to pay for it. Okay. So when we do all of this stuff, when we do pricing, we need to keep all that kind of stuff into consideration. Okay. And then I'm not saying that you have to charge $700. Like, you guys have to be realistic too, okay? Like, you can't sit there and say like, you know what, I've never done this business before in my life. I'm just starting, but I need $50,000 to be able to go full time with this and cover all of my expenses. So I'm going to quit my job and charge whatever to make $50,000 and go for it. You're going to fail. Like, you might not. I'm not going to sit there. Never mind. I'm not going to sit there and say you're going to fail. But the chances of you succeeding are very low if you're going to do that, because we always have a beginning, middle, and high, right? So when we first start in a job and everything, when we first start, we're at the bottom level, okay? When you graduate college or high school or whatever, and you go and you try and get your job, they're not going to pay you $100,000, right? They're going to start you this is the beginning step, and you work your way up. The beginning step isn't free. The beginning step isn't like, I'm going to lose money on everything. It's a beginning step, okay? And then you eventually start giving yourself raises. Same thing, I'm talking to you guys, if you have had the same prices for 5 years, you haven't given yourself a raise in 5 years, that's insane. So make sure you're giving yourself raises, make sure that you are pricing yourself appropriately, okay? Especially with cost of doing business, or pricing going up for everything, gas and everything. Got to keep all that stuff in consideration. So I hope this was helpful. If you want more information, like I said, please, please, please grab my pricing course. It has everything in there: how to run your cost doing business, how to figure out your expenses, how to set up your packages so that way they attract ideal clients and keep everything simple. I've got my pricing guide in there, a template in there for you guys, so you guys can put like all of your information in there. It's beautiful. You send it to your clients. And then I have a cost doing business calculator in there where, like I said, if you put all of your expenses in there, it will literally spit out what you're supposed to be charging, because I do all of the math for you in there. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. And